But we begin tonight with the unholy trinity of the modern-day Republican Party: Kanye, Elon, and Trump. That is according to House Judiciary Republicans, anyway, who about a year ago cranked out the tweet that you see on the screen. The tweet stayed up for 2 months until December 2022, when Republicans finally deleted it after Ye appeared with Sandy Hook conspiracy theorist Alex Jones and publicly praised Adolf Hitler. As the Bulwark noted, that tweet did not age well. Ye is now famous for having dinner with Trump and white nationalist and Holocaust denier Nick Fuentes at Mar-a-Lago, while Elon Musk, as the new owner of Twitter, promised to bring back right-wing figures who were once banned, including Donald Trump. He even recently endorsed a post attacking Jewish communities and accusing them of promoting dialectical hatred against whites. And as for Trump, he took a break from scowling in a Manhattan courtroom to host a rally in New Hampshire, where he vowed to root out his enemies.
We pledge to you that we will root out the communists, Marxists, fascists, and the radical left thugs that live like vermin within the confines of our country. The threat from outside forces is far less sinister, dangerous, and grave than the threat from within.
That's right. Dehumanizing your enemies and opponents by calling them vermin, a tactic famously used by Nazis Adolf Hitler and Mussolini. There's this weird, confusing trend that has taken over American politics, where folks once seen as icons of the left, or at least public figures with broad appeal, have moved to the far right and are getting more extreme over time. You have Ye, who went from George Bush doesn't care about black people to praising Trump's dragon energy. Then there's Trump, who millions tuned in to watch on The Apprentice, regardless of their political stance. As for Elon Musk, he's long had his billionaire tech entrepreneur cred, known as the Tesla guy, who sold 1 million cars to a lot of left coast liberals before turning Twitter into a hate speech free-for-all. In recent years, all three of these men have shifted into a different form of celebrity, known more for emboldening white supremacists and for fueling racism and hate in the U.S. than for anything else. Their rise represents a kind of chaos movement that has happened over the last 10 years. In other times, these are not people who would be seen as leaders of substance. But in the dangerous, erratic world we now occupy, these are the people many Americans are listening to. It's why we need to pay attention to Robert F. Kennedy Jr. He's not exactly Kanye or Elon or Trump, but he has his own anti-Semitic and racist controversies to contend with. He also has some extreme views. And importantly, his independent run for the White House isn't as fringe as it seems. He's actually becoming a force in this election. According to recent polling, he's at 21 points, only 16 points behind President Biden. Among young voters, he's polling at 32. Like the others, fame came before infamy. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is the son of Bobby and nephew of JFK, a champion of the environment, as close to a royal heir as Americans can get. But make no mistake, he is dangerous. RFK Jr. has spent years stoking fear of vaccines. He's risen to become a major figure in the anti-vax movement. And we're not just talking about COVID vaccines, but all vaccines: measles, mumps, rubella. A crusade like this has real-life consequences, something that likely keeps his family up at night. 3 Kennedy family members even wrote a piece in Politico declaring RFK Jr. has been tragically wrong about vaccines. There's one last thing about these chaos candidates, something they all have in common, and that is the money. Suzanne Craig shares some fascinating details in her piece in the New York Times about how RFK Jr. has turned his public crusade into a private windfall, and how his crusades, backed by the power of his surname, have earned him tens of millions of dollars. Suzanne Craig joins me now, along with Shermichael Singleton, political strategist and host of the Shermichael Singleton Show on SiriusXM. Thank you both for being here. I want to start with you, Suzanne. Let's go through this, because your piece is fascinating, because one of the things it demystifies is how rich RFK Jr. really is. You know, they call it praise without raise, Caribbean folks will say, that he has the name and he has the fame, but he doesn't necessarily have the capital. But, you know, these crusades that he's embarked on have actually made him a lot of money. Tell us a little bit about that.
Right. And, you know, Joy, I have to say, when I started this article and reporting for this story, I didn't know a lot about Robert F. Kennedy, except he was a Kennedy. and he'd done some good work cleaning up the Hudson River. And I started to dig into it, and I thought, this guy's got to be wealthy. He's got to have trust funds. And one of the first things that I noticed, there was a public filing, was that he was getting very little steady income off of his trust funds. And my sort of mission when I set out was to sort of look at his money and how he makes it. And then I thought, well, there's a few other things. He's got these jobs, and they're at nonprofits for the most part, or environmental groups, and they weren't throwing off very much money. But you could tell just by a Google search that he had a fairly expensive lifestyle. You didn't know if some of that came from other family money that I wasn't seeing. But I just started digging, and I had noticed that he had gone through a divorce in 2012, and I thought, well, maybe there's some documents in there. When there's, a divorce, the depositions are about the finance. Unfortunately, when people get divorced, it's usually about the money. And I ended up being able to review some of the documents from his divorce from Mary Richardson Kennedy, and it just opened up this door for me to understand how he makes his money. And it was incredible to see behind this name and this image that you think that he's working for a nonprofit was this just incredible private hustle that he has been doing for decades. He is a lawyer. He gets money from that. But he also, he's been able to intertwine his legal work with some of the nonprofit work that he has been doing. But then there was just this incredible, it was just the pace of the speeches that he was giving, sometimes up to 60 a year, charging upwards of $250,000. And then he was on advisory boards and boards of directors. He ended up in 2005 getting involved with a major venture capital firm out in California called Vantage Point. That netted him millions of dollars. And then he also was on the boards of a number of companies connected to Vantage Point. And all of this added up to a huge amount of money, but he, at the same time, we learned through the divorce documents, was leading an incredibly extravagant life. And you just always felt like he was just treading water. And he was pleading that he was telling his friends that he was broke. He got on one board, I found out, because he told a friend he was broke, and he got set up with a board position there. It was just really incredible to get this window into his world that was just years of this sort of behavior.
Did you get the sense in doing this research, Suzanne, that the anti-vax stuff, because he was more known for being an environmentalist, and people on the left really revered him for being, right? Is the anti-vax stuff a grift, to be blunt, and is the run for president a grift?
Well, the anti-vax stuff, there's a wrinkle in that, and that's that he joined this organization called the Children's Health Defense, in recent years, and he is the chief legal officer and the chairman. He went from almost no money to $500,000, and he gets paid, more than 3 times the president. He is a prolific fundraiser for them. So I think there could be an argument there that he should be paid more. We could debate whether that is too much. But what he did there, in addition to getting a huge salary from a nonprofit, he then went out and he says he got permission from the nonprofit to do this, but he established relationships with law firms where he was bringing, he could participate in lawsuits, potentially bring some in the door that he could participate in against pharmaceutical companies, some related to vaccines, and then he could get paid for that. He says that the Children's Health Defense Fund, the nonprofit, is getting some money back for that. But it was just fascinating to see. Even there, he was saying $500,000 is not enough, so I need this other thing. And then we found out a little bit, he along the way, you see this with rich people. I covered Wall Street for a long time, and it just was interesting to see. We found out that he had taken a free car from Lexus, and also even one of the homes on the Kennedy compound that you would think was his. He actually leased it for years from a wealthy friend and then bought it at a rate that he, had agreed 10 years before, the same rate. And he was also even one of the non-profits that he worked for. And I found this quite troubling. He had agreed, he had an agreement with them that they would pay for the airfare for his children to fly with him on longer trips. And I talked to him about that. He said, well, sometimes I was away from my family for a week or two and I was out of the country, so they would pay the airfare. And I don't know many people at corporations that have that sort of agreement, but he
Right.
just, it was sort of just accepted that that would happen.